Marcus Chen stepped off the transport shuttle onto Galactic Station Nexus, his worn duffel bag slung over his shoulder. The 16-year-old human looked small among the towering aliens that filled the station's corridors. Crystalline beings from Zerion Prime clicked past him on multiple legs, while the gas-breathing Antharians floated in their environmental suits overhead. Everything here was massive, advanced, and intimidating. His acceptance letter to the prestigious Galactic Martial Arts Academy crinkled in his sweaty palm. 3 months ago, Earth had finally been granted a single slot in the Academy's exchange program. Out of 8 billion humans, somehow the selection committee had chosen him. Marcus still wasn't sure why. The Academy's entrance hall stretched before him like a cathedral. Holographic displays showed legendary martial artists from across the galaxy performing impossible feats. A Krathan warrior split a moon in half with a single strike. A Voidborn master moved faster than light itself. Each display made Marcus feel more out of place. You must be the human. The voice rumbled from above. Marcus looked up to see Master Thekvar, a massive Bruthan whose rocky skin gleamed under the station's artificial light. The alien stood 12 feet tall with arms thick as tree trunks and eyes like burning coals. I am your combat instructor. Marcus bowed awkwardly, the way he'd practiced back on Earth. Yes, sir, Marcus Chen reporting for... Save your formalities, Thekvar interrupted. Your species has no martial tradition worth mentioning. You are here only because the Galactic Council mandates inclusion of primitive worlds. Do not expect special treatment. The other students gathered around them. Marcus recognized some species from his preparation materials. There was Zix, a 7-foot-tall mantoid whose blade arms could slice through titanium. Vera Lynn, an Aquarian whose fluid body could reshape itself at will. Cathara, a scion whose mental powers could crush minds from across a solar system. Each one looked at Marcus with curiosity or barely concealed contempt. This is the human? Zix clicked, his mandibles twitching with what might have been amusement. I thought they would send a warrior, not a hatchling. Humans barely qualify as sentient, added Gorth, a Vulcan whose molten skin radiated heat waves. They still fight with projectile weapons and chemical explosives, barbaric. Marcus felt his face burn with embarrassment. Everything they said was technically true. Humanity had only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. Their martial arts were limited to what could be accomplished with basic biology and physics. No energy manipulation, no reality-bending techniques, no cosmic awareness. Master Thekvar raised one massive hand for silence. Enough. The human will prove himself or fail like any other student. Today we begin with basic assessments. He gestured toward the training hall. Each of you will demonstrate your primary combat form. We start with fundamentals and work toward advanced techniques. The training hall was enormous, with multiple gravity wells allowing students to practice in their preferred environments. Specialized equipment lined the walls, quantum punching bags that existed in multiple dimensions, training dummies that could simulate any known fighting style, holographic opponents that learned and adapted in real time. Zix went first, his blade arms becoming a blur of motion as he carved through a series of energy targets. His technique was flawless, each strike precise and economical. He finished in under 10 seconds, having destroyed targets that would take most beings several minutes to even locate. Vera Lynn flowed into her demonstration next, her liquid body becoming a living weapon. She formed spears, shields, and whips from her own substance while simultaneously attacking from multiple angles. Her form was like watching water dance, beautiful and deadly. One by one, each student displayed abilities that defied Marcus's understanding of physics. Cathara lifted massive objects with her mind while simultaneously battling holographic opponents on 7 different fronts. Gorth's molten punches created new elements in the air around his targets. Then it was Marcus's turn. He walked to the center of the mat, hyper-aware of every eye focused on him. The other students whispered among themselves, making no effort to hide their skepticism. Some openly laughed. What style will you demonstrate, human? Master Thekvar asked, his tone suggesting he expected disappointment. Marcus took a deep breath. Mixed martial arts, sir. Earth standard. More laughter rippled through the group. Mixed martial arts sounded primitive compared to names like void dancing and quantum combat flow. Proceed, Thekvar rumbled. Marcus centered himself, letting his training take over. He'd started martial arts when he was 6, pushed into it by parents who wanted their shy son to build confidence. What began as a chore had become his passion. He'd trained in boxing, wrestling, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, and dozens of other disciplines. On Earth, he was considered talented but not exceptional. The training dummy activated, programmed for basic sparring protocols. It moved toward Marcus with mechanical precision, throwing a simple combination. Marcus slipped the first punch, parried the second, and countered with a quick jab to the dummy's midsection. Nothing flashy, just good fundamentals. Is this all? Zix called out. My larvae fight better than this. Marcus ignored the taunts and continued. The dummy increased its speed and complexity. Marcus adapted, using footwork his Earth instructors had drilled into him thousands of times. Duck, weave, counter, reset. His movements were economical and precise, but utterly mundane by galactic standards. Pathetic, Gorth muttered. Where are the energy projections? The dimensional strikes. He fights like a common animal. Master Thekvar watched silently, his expression unreadable. After 3 minutes, he signaled for Marcus to stop. Adequate for a primitive species, the instructor announced. You show basic competency in physical combat. However, this academy teaches true martial arts. Energy manipulation, reality-bending techniques, cosmic awareness, your physical dancing will not suffice for advanced courses. Marcus nodded, keeping his expression neutral despite the humiliation burning in his chest. He'd known this would be difficult, but the casual dismissal still stung. Report to remedial combat tomorrow. Thekvar continued. We will attempt to teach you the fundamentals of real martial arts. Perhaps in a few years you might progress to beginner techniques. As the other students filed out, Marcus heard their comments clearly. They weren't trying to be subtle. Poor thing doesn't even know how to channel Kai. I heard humans can't even sense energy fields. Why did the council waste a slot on such a backward species? Marcus gathered his things slowly, letting the hall empty before he left. Tomorrow would bring new humiliations, he was sure. But he was here, against all odds, and he wasn't going to give up easily. Earth was counting on him to prove humanity belonged among the stars, even if he had no idea how he was going to do it. The remedial combat classroom was a humbling place. Located in the academy's basement levels, it housed species considered too primitive for the main curriculum. Marcus found himself surrounded by beings from worlds that had barely achieved spaceflight. Most looked as lost and overwhelmed as he felt. Master Vexen, a spindly Therian with 6 arms and compound eyes, taught the remedial classes. Unlike the intimidating Thekvar, Vexen seemed almost sympathetic to his struggling students. Today we learn basic energy sensing, Vexen announced, his multiple arms moving in complex patterns. All advanced combat requires awareness of the cosmic forces that surround us. Chi, prana, quantum essence, different names for the same fundamental power. Marcus tried to follow along as Vexen demonstrated. The Therian's body began to glow with a soft blue light, energy swirling around him like visible wind. The other remedial students managed various degrees of success. Even the most primitive could produce at least a faint shimmer. Marcus felt nothing. No energy. No cosmic awareness, no mystical connection to the universe. He might as well have been trying to flap his arms and fly. Human Chen, Vexen called after 20 minutes of failed attempts. Perhaps your species simply lacks the biological capability for energy manipulation. This is not uncommon among newer spacefaring races. The dismissal was gentle but complete. Marcus spent the rest of the class doing basic physical exercises, while his classmates practiced energy techniques. By the end, even the most sympathetic students were looking at him with pity. Lunch in the academy cafeteria was another ordeal. The dining hall buzzed with conversation in dozens of languages, most of it incomprehensible to Marcus. He sat alone, picking at food that had been specially prepared for human biology. It tasted like cardboard and disappointment. Mind if we join you? The voice was surprisingly kind. Marcus looked up to see 2 students he hadn't met before. The first was Tavarin, a tall ethereal whose translucent skin revealed flowing energy patterns beneath. The second introduced herself as Nyx, a compact shadowkin whose dark body seemed to absorb light. I'm Marcus, he replied, grateful for any company that didn't seem hostile. We heard about your first day, Tavarin said, settling gracefully across from him. Don't let it get to you. Everyone struggles initially, but do they struggle this much? Marcus asked. I can't even sense energy, let alone manipulate it. I'm starting to think the selection committee made a mistake. Nyx leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. Can I tell you something? Most students here are obsessed with flashy techniques because they've been taught that's what matters. But there's wisdom in studying how different species approach combat. What do you mean? Your demonstration yesterday, Tavarin explained. It was unlike anything we'd seen. The precision, the efficiency. You waste no movement, no energy. It's fascinating, Marcus laughed bitterly. Fascinating isn't the word most people use. Primitive, maybe, barbaric. Those people are fools, Nick said firmly. I've been studying combat theory for decades. There's something elegant about pure physical technique unmarred by energy dependency. Their conversation was interrupted by familiar laughter. Zix approached their table with his usual group of followers, his blade arms gleaming under the cafeteria lights. Still trying to fit in, human? Zix clicked, his mandibles spread in what passed for a smirk among his species. Perhaps you should transfer to one of the agricultural programs. I hear humans excel at growing food. Leave him alone, Zix, Tavarin said calmly. Why defend him? He doesn't belong here. Zix gestured dismissively toward Marcus. His species can't even manifest basic ki. They're evolutionary dead ends. Marcus felt anger rising in his chest, but he forced himself to remain seated. Getting into a fight on his second day would only prove their point about human primitiveness. You know what? Zix continued, apparently enjoying himself. I challenge you to a formal sparring match, human. Tomorrow after classes. Let's settle this properly. The cafeteria had grown quiet around them. Formal challenges were serious business at the academy, governed by strict rules and observed by faculty. Refusing would brand Marcus as a coward. Accepting meant facing one of the academy's top students in front of everyone. I accept, Marcus heard himself say. Zix's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. Excellent. Standard rules apply. First to achieve 3 clean strikes or force submission wins. No weapons, no Kai enhancement allowed. His eyes glittered with malicious amusement. Though I suppose that last rule won't affect you anyway. As Zix and his followers moved away, Tavarin looked concerned. Marcus, are you sure about this? Zix is incredibly fast and his natural weapons... I know, Marcus interrupted, but I can't back down. If I do, I'll never have any credibility here. That afternoon, news of the challenge spread throughout the academy. By evening, it seemed like every student knew about the human who had dared to face Zix in formal combat. The betting pools heavily favored the mantoid, with odds running nearly 50-1 against Marcus. Marcus spent the evening in the academy's archives, studying everything available about mantoid physiology and combat styles. Zix's species was built for speed and precision. Their blade arms could move faster than most beings could track, and their segmented bodies allowed for incredible flexibility. But as Marcus read deeper, he began to notice patterns. Mantoid combat was primarily linear, focused on direct attacks and retreats. Their blade arms, while devastating, had limited range of motion. They were ambush predators by nature, evolved for quick kills rather than extended combat. Late that night, alone in the academy's training room, Marcus worked through combinations. Without energy enhancement or alien physiology, he would have to rely on pure technique and strategy. He practiced scenarios over and over, visualizing how different approaches might work against Zix's superior speed. The blade arms were the obvious threat, but they were also Zix's primary weakness. Mantoids depended on them so heavily that they neglected other defensive options. If Marcus could somehow neutralize those weapons, even temporarily, he might have a chance. As dawn approached, Marcus felt a strange sense of calm settling over him. He couldn't match Zix's speed or natural weapons. He couldn't channel energy or bend reality, but he understood fighting in a way that came from thousands of hours of pure physical training. Tomorrow, he would find out if that was enough. The morning classes dragged by endlessly. Marcus could barely focus on the lectures about energy theory and cosmic awareness. His thoughts kept drifting to the upcoming match, running through scenarios and contingencies. Other students watched him with mixtures of curiosity and pity. A few offered encouragement, but most seemed to view the match as a foregone conclusion. The human would be humiliated, proving once and for all that his species didn't belong among the galactic elite. When the final bell rang, signaling the end of classes, Marcus felt his stomach drop. Time was up. In 1 hour, he would face Zix in front of the entire academy, with nothing but his Earth-trained skills to rely on. As he walked toward the main training hall, Marcus tried to remember why he was here. Not just to prove humanity deserved respect, though that was part of it. He was here because somewhere deep down, he believed that skill and determination mattered more than natural advantages or mystical powers. In an hour, he would find out if he was right or just incredibly naive. The main training hall filled rapidly as word spread about the formal challenge. Students from every year and discipline crowded around the designated sparring circle, their excited chatter creating a din that echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Marcus had never seen the academy so animated. Master Thekvar stood at the circle's edge, his massive form serving as the official referee. His expression remained stoic, but Marcus caught something in those burning eyes. Disappointment, maybe, that his human student was about to be publicly humiliated. Formal challenge rules are simple, Thekvar announced, his voice carrying easily over the crowd. First combatant to land 3 clean strikes or forced submission wins. No weapons, no energy enhancement, no outside interference. The match ends when I declare it over. Zix entered the circle to enthusiastic cheers from his supporters. The 7-foot mantoid moved with predatory grace, his blade arms gleaming under the training hall's lights. He performed a series of practice strikes that were too fast for most eyes to follow, each movement precise and deadly. Marcus stepped into the circle to a much more subdued reception. A few polite claps from Tavarin and Nyx, but mostly silence or barely concealed mockery. He looked small and fragile compared to his opponent, lacking any obvious weapons or supernatural abilities. You can still withdraw, Zix offered, though his tone made it clear he hoped Marcus wouldn't. No shame in recognizing your limitations. Thanks, but I'm good, Marcus replied, settling into a loose fighting stance that would have looked familiar to any Earth martial artist. Thekvar raised his hand. Combatants ready? Begin. Zix exploded into motion immediately, crossing the circle in a blur of speed that would have been impossible for baseline human reflexes to track. His blade arms came down in a scissoring motion, designed to end the fight instantly. But Marcus wasn't there. He had moved the instant Thekvar's hand began to drop, not waiting for the word begin. While Zix covered distance in a straight line, Marcus angled laterally, using footwork patterns that turned the mantoid's superior speed against him. Zix's blade sliced through empty air as Marcus slipped past his guard. For a split second, the human was inside the mantoid's reach, where those deadly arms couldn't function effectively. Marcus drove his elbow hard into the soft joint between Zix's torso segments. The impact sent Zix stumbling, more from surprise than damage. The crowd went silent, shocked that the human had not only avoided the first attack but had actually landed a counter. First strike to Chen, Thekvar announced, his voice betraying no emotion. Zix recovered quickly, his compound eyes focusing with predatory intensity. Lucky shot, he clicked, but there was less confidence in his voice now. The second exchange was longer. Zix approached more cautiously, using his reach advantage to probe Marcus's defenses with quick jabs and slashes. Marcus gave ground steadily, seeming to be pushed back by his opponent's superior attributes. But to anyone who understood fight dynamics, something else was happening. Marcus wasn't just retreating, he was herding Zix into specific angles, controlling the distance and timing of their exchanges. Every step backward was calculated, every defensive movement designed to set up future opportunities. When Zix finally committed to a major attack, launching himself forward with both blade arms extended, Marcus was ready. He dropped low, sweeping Zix's legs while simultaneously grabbing the mantoid's leading arm. Using Zix's own momentum against him, Marcus executed a perfect hip toss that sent the larger alien crashing to the mat. Before Zix could recover, Marcus had transitioned smoothly into a joint lock, controlling the very arm that had been threatening him moments before. The mantoid's natural weapons were useless when his arm was hyperextended and immobilized. Second strike to Chen, Thekvar called. The crowd's murmur grew louder. This wasn't supposed to be happening. Zix was one of their elite students, bred for combat and trained in advanced techniques. How was a primitive human outfighting him? Zix struggled free of the joint lock, his movements becoming increasingly frantic. The calm confidence he'd shown at the beginning was replaced by something approaching panic. Nothing in his training had prepared him for this style of combat. Impossible, someone in the crowd whispered. The human doesn't even use energy. How was he predicting Zix's movements? Marcus heard the confusion and disbelief around the circle, but he didn't let it distract him. He'd fought too many tough opponents on Earth to get caught up in crowd reactions. Right now, there was only him, Zix, and the space between them. The third exchange was the longest yet. Zix had abandoned his usual direct approach, trying to use his speed to overwhelm Marcus with combinations. His blade arms became a whirlwind of motion, striking from multiple angles in patterns that should have been impossible to defend against. But Marcus had spent years sparring with much larger, stronger opponents back on Earth. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu had taught him how to survive against superior athletes. Boxing had shown him how to read combinations and find openings. Wrestling had drilled into him the importance of position and leverage. He slipped punches by millimeters, redirected attacks that couldn't be avoided, and used Zix's aggression to create opportunities. When the mantoid overextended on a particularly ambitious combination, Marcus was there to capitalize. He caught Zix's leading arm again, but this time, instead of going for a takedown, he pivoted and drove his knee into the mantoid's midsection. The impact doubled Zix over, and Marcus followed up with an uppercut that snapped his opponent's head back. "Third strike to Chen," Thekvar announced. "Match to the human." The silence in the training hall was deafening. Hundreds of the galaxy's most promising young warriors stared in stunned disbelief at the scene before them. Zix, one of their acknowledged champions, lay gasping on the mat while a supposedly primitive human stood over him, barely breathing hard. Marcus extended his hand to help Zix up, a gesture of respect he'd learned from his Earth instructors. The mantoid stared at the offered hand for a long moment before accepting it. "I don't understand," Zix said quietly, his mandibles clicking with confusion. "You have no energy enhancement, no supernatural abilities. How did you—" "I've been fighting my whole life," Marcus replied simply, "just without the special effects." Master Thekvar stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Chen, report to my office after the medical check. The rest of you disperse. Show's over." As the crowd began to break up, Marcus caught fragments of excited conversation. "Did you see how he moved? It was like he knew what Zix was going to do before Zix did. Those techniques, I've never seen anything like them. Maybe the humans aren't as primitive as we thought." Taverin and Nyx approached Marcus, their faces showing mixtures of amazement and pride. "That was incredible," Taverin said, his energy pattern swirling with excitement. "The way you controlled the entire fight, you made it look easy," Nyx added. "But I was watching your footwork. That was centuries of refined technique." Marcus smiled, feeling lighter than he had since arriving at the academy. "Thanks. Though I have a feeling the real challenge is just beginning." He was right. As he walked toward the medical station for his mandatory post-fight check, Marcus could feel eyes following him from every corner of the training hall. Some held new respect, others suspicion or curiosity. Word of his victory would spread quickly through the academy. By tomorrow, every student and instructor would know about the human who had defeated Zix without using a single energy technique. That attention would bring new challenges, new tests, and probably new enemies. But for now, Marcus allowed himself to enjoy the moment. He had proven something important today, not just to the alien students who had dismissed him, but to himself. Earth's martial arts might seem primitive by galactic standards, but in the right hands, they were devastatingly effective. The question now was whether the Academy was ready to learn what humans could really do when pushed to their limits. Master Thekvar's office felt like standing inside a mountain. The walls were carved from solid stone, decorated with weapons and trophies from a dozen worlds. The massive Bruthen sat behind a desk that looked impossibly small beneath his bulk, studying Marcus with those burning coal eyes. "Sit," Thekvar rumbled, gesturing to a chair that had been adjusted for human proportions. Marcus settled nervously, unsure what to expect. The fight with Zix had been 3 days ago, and the Academy was still buzzing with conversation about it. Some students now looked at him with respect, others with suspicion. A few had even approached him asking about human fighting techniques. "Tell me about your training," Thekvar said without preamble. "Sir, your combat instruction on Earth. How long? What methods? I want details." Marcus took a breath, organizing his thoughts. "I started when I was 6. My parents wanted me to build confidence. I began with traditional karate, then added boxing when I was 8, Brazilian jiu-jitsu at 10. By 12, I was training in multiple disciplines: wrestling, Muay Thai, judo, some Filipino martial arts." "Frequency of training?" 6 days a week usually. sometimes 7 during competition seasons. 2 to 4 hours per session, depending on what I was working on. Thekvar's eyes narrowed. That's significant. Your species begins combat training in childhood? Not all of us, Marcus clarified. But it's not uncommon. We have combat sports, competition circuits, professional leagues. Fighting is entertainment on Earth as much as self-defense. The master leaned back, his chair groaning under his weight. Interesting. Most species view combat as either necessary survival skill or mystical art. Few treat it as recreation. We also study it scientifically, Marcus added. Biomechanics, physics, psychology. We analyze everything. Technique efficiency, injury prevention, optimal training methods. There are universities that research combat sports. You speak of fighting as if it were engineering. Marcus considered that. I guess in some ways it is. We break down every movement, test what works and what doesn't, constantly refine and improve. If something can be measured, we measure it. Thekvar was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his tone had changed. You defeated Zix using pure technique, no energy enhancement, no supernatural abilities, just skill and knowledge. Yes, sir. This should not be possible. Mantoids are apex predators. Their species has been refining combat techniques for thousands of years. They possess natural weapons that can cut through starship hulls. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. I don't know about that, sir. I just fought the way I was taught. Which is the problem? Thekvar said, his voice growing thoughtful. Or perhaps the solution. Chen, I'm transferring you to advanced classes. Sir? Marcus couldn't hide his surprise. You will join the elite combat program. Full curriculum including energy manipulation theory and cosmic awareness training. However, Thekvar held up one massive finger. You will also begin teaching. Teaching what? Human combat methodology. I want to understand how your species approaches fighting without supernatural enhancement. This academy has become too dependent on raw power and energy techniques. Your victory over Zix suggests we may be missing fundamental principles. Marcus felt his head spinning. Master Thekvar, I'm honored, but I don't know if I'm qualified to. You defeated one of our top students in 13 seconds of actual combat. Thekvar interrupted. You used techniques this academy has never seen, based on principles we don't fully understand. If that doesn't qualify you, I'm not sure what would. The next few weeks blurred together in a whirlwind of new challenges. Advanced classes were brutal, covering topics that pushed the boundaries of Marcus's comprehension. Dimensional combat. Theory explored fighting across multiple planes of existence simultaneously. Quantum awareness training attempted to develop perception that operated faster than light speed. Marcus struggled with most of the esoteric material. While his classmates manipulated energy and bent reality around them, he remained frustratingly limited to basic physics and biology. But his presence in the advanced classes sent a message throughout the academy. Human combat methods were being taken seriously. His teaching duties proved equally challenging in different ways. 3 times per week, Marcus led seminars on human fighting techniques for groups of increasingly interested students. What had started as a handful of curious observers had grown into packed sessions with waiting lists. Today we're covering distance management, Marcus announced to a crowd of 40 students representing a dozen species. Most of your fighting styles assume you can enhance speed or strength with energy, but what happens when you can't? How do you defeat a superior opponent using only positioning and timing? He demonstrated with volunteers, showing how footwork could neutralize reach advantages, how angles could turn strength against itself, how proper distance could make speed irrelevant. The concepts were simple but revolutionary for students accustomed to overpowering their problems. Vera Lynn, the liquid aquarian who had become one of his most dedicated students, raised a tendril. Marcus, why do humans develop such complex fighting systems if you can't enhance your physical abilities? It seems inefficient compared to just increasing your strength or speed directly. Because we couldn't increase our strength or speed directly, Marcus replied. So we had to get better at fighting itself. When you can't rely on supernatural advantages, you have to perfect natural ones. Cathara, The powerful scion leaned forward with interest. You mean your limitations forced innovation? Exactly. Think about it. If you can solve any problem by applying more psychic power, why would you develop subtle techniques? But if raw power isn't an option, you have to get creative. After class, Marcus was approached by a student he hadn't seen before. Tall and graceful, with the distinctive chrome skin of a Mechanian, she introduced herself as Unit Designation 77 Alpha, though she preferred the name Silver. I've been observing your teaching methods, Silver said, her voice carrying the perfect modulation of artificial intelligence. Your approach to combat optimization is fascinating. My species assumes mechanical enhancement is the obvious solution to physical limitations. Let me guess, Marcus said. Stronger servos, faster processors, more armor? Precisely. But watching, your demonstration suggests that superior technique can overcome superior hardware. This contradicts our fundamental programming. Marcus smiled. Want to test that theory? Silver's optical sensors brightened with interest. A practical demonstration? Yes, that would be most illuminating. Word of the impromptu sparring match spread quickly. By the time they reached the training hall, a crowd had gathered. Silver was formidable. Her mechanical body could move with inhuman precision and strength, and her computer brain could calculate optimal attack patterns faster than biological thought. The match began with Silver attempting to overwhelm Marcus with perfect combinations executed at superhuman speed. But perfection, Marcus realized, could be predictable. Computers optimized for efficiency, which meant their movements followed logical patterns. Marcus began mixing unexpected elements into his responses, deliberately suboptimal angles that confused Silver's calculations, timing that prioritized surprise over efficiency, movements that made no sense from a pure physics standpoint, but worked because they were unexpected. Within minutes, he had Silver trapped in a submission hold she couldn't compute her way out of. Her superior strength meant nothing when the joint lock prevented her from applying it effectively. Fascinating, Silver said after they reset. Your techniques violate optimal efficiency protocols, yet they achieve superior results. How is this possible? Because fighting isn't just physics, Marcus explained. It's psychology, too. Humans learned to expect the unexpected because we had to fight other humans who were just as smart as we were. Pure optimization is vulnerable to creative subversion. That evening, Marcus found himself in the Academy's observation lounge, looking out at the stars through massive, transparent aluminum windows. Tavarin and Nix joined him, as had become their habit after particularly eventful days. You've caused quite a stir, Tavarin observed, his energy pattern swirling with amusement. 3 more species requested human exchange students for their own academies. The Council is apparently reconsidering their assessment of human martial potential, Nix added. Some are calling for a comprehensive study of Earth combat techniques. Marcus sipped his synthesized Earth coffee, still barely believing how much had changed in just a few weeks. It's strange. I came here feeling like humanity was primitive and backward. Now everyone's treating our fighting methods like they're revolutionary. Perhaps, Tavarin suggested, the revolution isn't in your techniques themselves, but in your approach to developing them. Most species rely on their natural advantages or energy manipulation. Humans had to become students of combat itself. Marcus nodded, watching a transport shuttle dock with the station. Inside might be another exchange student from a species convinced they had nothing to learn from primitive aliens. He remembered that feeling all too well. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new students eager to understand human fighting methods, new opportunities to prove that innovation could overcome raw power. But tonight, Marcus allowed himself to feel something he hadn't experienced since arriving at the Academy. He felt proud to be human. 2 months after his victory over Zix, Marcus found himself facing his greatest challenge yet. The Academy Council had announced the annual Galactic Tournament, a prestigious competition where the finest students from dozens of worlds would demonstrate their martial prowess. This year, for the first time ever, they were creating a new division specifically for pure technique combat. No energy enhancement, no reality manipulation, No supernatural abilities, Master Thekvar explained during the announcement assembly. Combat in its most fundamental form. Skill against skill, technique against technique. The implications were clear to everyone present. This division had been created because of Marcus and the attention his teaching had generated. It was both an honor and a tremendous pressure. The galactic martial arts community would be watching to see if human methods could compete on the highest stage. Marcus wasn't the only human entering the tournament. The Exchange Council had fast-tracked 3 more human students to the academy. Sarah Kim, Olympic-level judoka from Korea, David Santos, a boxing prodigy from Brazil, and Elena Volkov, a sambo champion from Russia. All were incredibly skilled, but none had adapted to alien combat quite like Marcus had. The pressure must be enormous, Sarah said during one of their training sessions. She was working on adapting her judo throws to work against species with non-standard body configurations. Everyone's expecting us to prove that humans belong here. No pressure at all, David replied sarcastically, shadowboxing against a holographic opponent calibrated to Bruthan physiology. Just the reputation of our entire species riding on our performance. Marcus understood their anxiety. The tournament had drawn competitors from across the galaxy, beings who had trained for centuries in combat techniques refined over millennia. The pure technique division might ban energy enhancement, but it didn't equalize natural physical advantages. Some competitors were simply built for fighting in ways humans weren't. There was Korgthak, a massive siege breaker whose natural armor plating could withstand starship weapons. Silai, a serpentine naga whose flexible spine allowed impossible contortions. Quindar, an 8-armed arachnoid with natural reflexes that operated faster than most nervous systems could process. You're overthinking this, Elena observed. She was the most pragmatic of the group, approaching combat like an engineering problem to be solved. Every opponent has advantages and disadvantages. The key is finding the exploits. Marcus had been thinking the same thing. His months at the academy had taught him that while alien species possessed incredible natural abilities, those abilities often came with predictable limitations. The challenge was adapting human techniques to exploit those weaknesses. The tournament format was straightforward. Single elimination brackets, with matches fought under traditional galactic rules. No time limits, victory by knockout, submission, or judge's decision if the fight went too long. Each competitor would face opponents from across the galaxy until only one remained. Marcus's first opponent was announced as Veltar, a crystalline warrior from the Zarian system. Crystallines were living gemstones, their bodies capable of growing razor-sharp projections at will. They were nearly indestructible and could regenerate from massive damage, but they were slow and inflexible. The night before his first match, Marcus couldn't sleep. He lay in his academy dormitory room, staring at the ceiling and running through potential strategies. Fighting a crystalline required abandoning most conventional human techniques. Punches and kicks would only result in cut hands and feet against their gemstone skin. Soft knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. He opened it to find Master Thekvar, looking unusually thoughtful. "Walk with me," the Bruthan said simply. They made their way to the Academy's meditation gardens, a peaceful space filled with plants from across the galaxy. Bioluminescent flowers from ethereal worlds cast soft blue light, while earth roses added splashes of familiar color. "You're nervous," Thekvar observed. "It wasn't a question, yes sir. Tomorrow feels like more than just a tournament match. It feels like a test of everything I've learned, everything I've taught." Thekvar nodded slowly. "When I was young, my people believed that strength was everything. The strongest Bruthan led our clans, settled our disputes, determined our future. It was simple and effective." He paused beside a fountain that played with altered gravity, water flowing upward in impossible spirals. Then we encountered other species, beings who could defeat us without matching our strength. It was humbling. My people had to learn that power takes many forms. Marcus waited, sensing there was more. "Your species has taught this academy something important," Thekvar continued. "That limitations can become advantages if you understand them correctly. Tomorrow you face an opponent who seems to have every advantage. But remember, the crystalline strength is also their weakness." The next morning, the tournament arena was packed to capacity. Representatives from hundreds of worlds had gathered to witness the pure technique division. many skeptical that combat without energy enhancement could provide meaningful entertainment. Marcus entered the arena to mixed reactions. Some cheered. His teaching had gained him admirers throughout the academy. Others remained silent, waiting to see if the human could live up to the reputation he'd built. Veltar crystallized into the arena like a walking sculpture, each step creating small fractures in the reinforced floor. 7 feet tall and covered in natural armor that sparkled under the arena lights, he looked absolutely formidable. Human, Veltar's voice resonated like wind chimes. I have studied your techniques. Your methods may work against soft-bodied opponents, but crystallines are not so easily manipulated. We'll see, Marcus replied, settling into a loose stance that kept his options open. The match began with Veltar advancing slowly, growing blade-like projections from his arms as he moved. His strategy was obvious. Use his natural weapons and durability to overwhelm Marcus while negating the human's speed advantage. Marcus circled carefully, studying his opponent's movements. Crystallines were indeed slow, but they made up for it with incredible reach and the ability to create weapons anywhere on their body. Direct engagement would be suicide. But as Marcus watched, he noticed something interesting. Every time Veltar created a new crystalline projection, there was a brief moment where his balance shifted to accommodate the changed weight distribution. And when he moved those projections, they followed predictable geometric patterns. Crystallines thought in terms of optimal angles and structural integrity. Marcus began his attack not with strikes, but with movement. He forced Veltar to constantly adjust his weapon configurations, creating projection after projection as he tried to match Marcus's positioning. Each change made the crystalline slightly more top-heavy, slightly more committed to specific angles of attack. When Marcus finally engaged, it wasn't to attack Veltar directly. Instead, he used the crystalline's own weight and momentum against him. A perfectly timed trip sent the massive warrior crashing to the arena floor, his numerous projections making it impossible for him to break his fall properly. Before Veltar could rise, Marcus had positioned himself where the crystalline couldn't reach him without completely reconfiguring his body, a process that took several seconds. It was a positional checkmate that neutralized every one of Veltar's advantages. Submission or knockout? Marcus asked calmly. Veltar studied his position for a long moment before his crystalline form slumped in defeat. Submission. I cannot reach you, and any attempt to do so will only worsen my position. The arena erupted. The crowd had expected to see the human crushed or cut to pieces. Instead, they'd witnessed a masterclass in tactical thinking and positional awareness as Marcus helped Veltar to his feet, a gesture of respect that earned him nods of approval from across the arena. He caught sight of Master Thekvar in the judges section. The Bruthan's expression remained neutral, but Marcus caught the slightest nod of acknowledgement, one match down. But as Marcus looked at the tournament bracket, he knew the real challenges were just beginning. Each subsequent opponent would be more skilled, more dangerous, and more determined to prevent the human from advancing. The galaxy was watching now, and Marcus intended to give them a show they would never forget. The tournament finals had arrived faster than anyone expected. Marcus's journey through the bracket had become the talk of the galactic martial arts community. He had defeated opponents that should have been impossible for a human to face, using techniques that redefined what combat could be. After Veltar, he'd faced Sislai, the serpentine naga whose flexible spine seemed to make grappling impossible. Marcus had spent the entire match controlling distance and angles, using the naga's own coiling movements to tie her into positions where her flexibility became a disadvantage. When she finally submitted, it was because her own body had become a knot she couldn't escape. His semi-final opponent had been the 8-armed arachnoid Quindar, whose natural reflexes operated faster than most beings could perceive. That match had been a chess game played at lightning speed, with Marcus using misdirection and feints to overload Quindar's processing capacity. When you could attack from 8 different angles, it turned out you could also be confused by 8 different fake attacks simultaneously. Now Marcus stood across the arena from his final opponent, and for the first time since arriving at the academy, he faced another human being. Sarah Kim had dominated her own bracket with beautiful judo technique adapted for alien physiology. Where Marcus fought like a chess master, Calculating positions and exploiting weaknesses, Sarah fought like an artist, using perfect leverage and timing to turn her opponent's strength into graceful throws that seemed almost choreographed. The arena was packed beyond capacity. Representatives from every major world had gathered to witness something unprecedented. The Pure Technique Division final being fought between two humans. The species that had been dismissed as primitive were now providing the tournament's most compelling competition. "I never thought I'd face you here," Sarah said quietly as they approached the center of the arena. "When I was selected for the exchange program, they told me about the human who had already made waves at the academy." "Funny how things work out," Marcus replied. "Though I'm not sure Earth Command is going to be happy about this result regardless of who wins." Sarah smiled. "Oh, I think they'll be fine with it. After today, no one in the galaxy will ever call humans primitive again." Master Thekvar served as the finals referee, his massive presence lending gravitas to the moment. Around the arena, spectators from dozens of species watched in fascination as two supposedly inferior beings prepared to demonstrate the culmination of human martial arts. "This final represents something unique in tournament history," Thekvar announced to the crowd. "Two competitors from the same world, using techniques developed in isolation from galactic combat traditions. Today we discover not just who is the superior fighter, but what human martial arts can achieve when pushed to their absolute limits." The match began with both fighters circling carefully, each intimately familiar with the other's capabilities. Sarah was technically perfect, her judo refined through years of competition at the highest levels. Marcus was adaptable and creative, his mixed martial arts background giving him tools for any situation that might arise. Their first exchange was brief but telling. Sarah attempted a traditional judo throw, committing fully to the technique with picture-perfect form. Marcus sprawled backward, denying the throw while simultaneously attempting a takedown of his own. Sarah countered with a hip toss that Marcus barely escaped, rolling away before she could secure a dominant position. The crowd watched in amazement as the two humans moved through combinations that seemed almost choreographed in their beauty and precision. Unlike the power-based confrontations typical of galactic combat, this was pure technique. Every movement calculated, every position contested, every advantage immediately countered. "They're speaking the same language," Tavarin observed from the academy section, "but they're having completely different conversations." It was true. Both fighters understood the fundamental principles of human combat: leverage, timing, distance, position. But they applied those principles through entirely different philosophical approaches. Sarah sought the perfect technique, the ideal throw or submission that would end the fight with textbook precision. Marcus looked for the unexpected angle, the creative solution that would give him an edge his opponent couldn't anticipate. As the match progressed, Marcus began to realize that Sarah's technical perfection was both her greatest strength and most exploitable weakness. Her techniques were so refined, so precisely executed, that they followed predictable patterns. She was like a master calligrapher whose brushstrokes were beautiful, but always followed the same fundamental forms. Marcus started introducing elements that shouldn't have worked, deliberately awkward angles, timing that violated optimal efficiency, movements that made no sense from a pure technique standpoint, but succeeded because they were completely unexpected. He began fighting like the confused alien species he'd faced throughout the tournament, forcing Sarah to adapt to combat logic that didn't follow human patterns. The strategy worked. Sarah's perfect judo began to falter as she encountered scenarios her training hadn't prepared her for. When Marcus attacked from impossible angles or used leverage in ways that violated textbook principles, she hesitated for crucial fractions of seconds. Those hesitations were all Marcus needed. The final exchange came 15 minutes into the match. Sarah attempted her most polished technique, a beautiful hip throw that should have ended the fight decisively. But Marcus had been waiting for that exact moment, that perfect expression of judo artistry. As Sarah committed to the throw, Marcus shifted his weight in a way that seemed to cooperate with her technique. But at the last possible instant, he redirected her momentum, using her own perfect leverage against her. Instead of being thrown, he guided their combined motion into a position where he could secure a submission hold. Sarah found herself trapped in a rear naked choke that had materialized from what should have been her moment of victory. She struggled for several seconds before tapping out, acknowledging defeat with the grace that had characterized her entire tournament run. The arena exploded into chaos. Beings from across the galaxy leaped to their feet, cheering for a performance that had redefined their understanding of what combat could be. For the first time in tournament history, the Pure Technique Division had provided the most compelling fights of the entire competition. As Marcus helped Sarah to her feet, she smiled ruefully. "You fight like you're insane, you know that? Half your techniques shouldn't work in theory. That's probably why they work in practice," Marcus replied. "Congratulations on an amazing tournament. You made every throw look like art." Master Thekvar approached the center of the arena, carrying the Pure Technique Championship belt, a simple band of metal that somehow managed to look more prestigious than any of the ornate energy-enhanced division trophies. "Marcus Chen," Thekvar announced, his voice carrying easily across the arena. "Pure Technique Tournament Champion. In achieving this victory, you have proven that mastery of fundamental principles can overcome any advantage. You have shown the galaxy that true martial arts transcend species, enhancement, and power." As Marcus accepted the championship belt, he looked out at the crowd of alien faces surrounding him. Some showed respect, others amazement. A few showed calculation as they undoubtedly considered what human techniques might mean for their own combat traditions. But what struck him most was the group of human exchange students in the academy section. Sarah stood with David and Elena, all three beaming with pride. Tavern and Nyx cheered alongside them, their alien forms united in celebration of their friend's achievement. 6 months ago, Marcus had arrived at this academy feeling like humanity was primitive and backward, convinced that they had nothing to offer a galaxy full of beings who could manipulate energy and bend reality. Now he stood as champion of the most prestigious Pure Technique tournament in galactic history. The irony wasn't lost on him. In trying to prove that humans belonged among the stars, he had discovered that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in matching alien abilities, but in perfecting their own unique approach to challenges that seemed impossible. After the ceremony, after the interviews and congratulations and formal presentations, Marcus found himself back in the Academy's meditation gardens. The same fountain still played with impossible gravity, water flowing upward in defiance of physics. Master Thekvar found him there, just as he had the night before the tournament began. "Regrets?" the Bruthan asked. Marcus considered the question seriously. "No regrets, but I've been thinking about what comes next. The tournament is over, but in a lot of ways, it feels like everything is just beginning. The Galactic Combat Council has already approached the Academy about establishing a permanent human combat studies program," Thekvar revealed. "They want to understand how your species developed such sophisticated fighting systems without energy enhancement. There's talk of sending researchers to Earth, of creating exchange programs that work both ways." Marcus smiled. "I guess that selection committee made a better choice than they realized when they picked me for the exchange program." "Perhaps. Or perhaps they simply recognized potential that you didn't know you possessed." As they walked back toward the academy, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He'd started as a shy teenager from Earth, convinced he had nothing to offer beings who could manipulate cosmic forces and reshape reality. He was ending as the galaxy's Pure Technique champion, having proven that skill and determination could overcome any natural advantage. But more than that, he'd helped change how the galaxy viewed humanity itself. They were no longer the primitive species lucky to have achieved spaceflight. They were the innovators who had turned limitations into advantages, who had perfected the art of fighting itself, rather than relying on supernatural enhancements. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to learn and teach, new chances to prove that humans belonged among the stars. But tonight, Marcus was content to walk through the academy halls as something he'd never expected to become. He was a bridge between worlds, carrying the best of human knowledge into a galaxy ready to learn from the species they'd once dismissed, and that he realized was worth more than any championship belt could ever represent.